right. Welcome, welcome. It's night talk. It's night talk. We have another episode of Night Talk. All right, here we go. Yes, we're live. All right, everything's humming. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Come on in, grab a seat, and boy, do we have a deep space exploration for you tonight. For those of you new to Night Talk, this is where we campfire and chat about everything under the stars. I'm your host, Gabriel Biederman from National Parks at Night. And again, thank you for joining us. Comment below where you are tuning in from. And while you do that, just a reminder, if you can't stay for the whole episode, they are posted on our National Parks at Night channel about 10 to 15 minutes afterwards. They usually run about an hour long, so I totally understand. But you can always rewatch this episode and more of our recent ones, including we just interviewed the Aurora guy, Isabella Tabaki, and Kat Machin. So you can watch all of those at your leisure by going to National Parks at Night or Night Photo Summit Instagram page and looking at our Reels. It's under the Reels section. So you can also get a free taste of Night Photo Summit every Tuesday and Thursday leading up to Night Photo Summit by going to our website, 2025.nightphotosummit.com, starting at midnight East Coast Standard Time. So today is Wednesday. That means in 4 short hours, you can go to that website and watch January 16th's class, which will be streaming, and that class is To the Moon and Beyond by Jessica Rojas. That was from last year's Night Photo Summit. See, there's again previous Night Photo Summits, but this will give you a great taste of what you could expect for these upcoming ones and also just free education. But wait, there's even more. This Friday, we've got a very special pre-con session called How We Got the Shots. And we'll be featuring Night Photo Summit speakers, Alex Wise, Forrest Chaput, Mary Beth Kaczynski, Prince PBO, and Susan Magnano. These will not be streamed on Instagram. If you want to learn more about how you can watch these Friday night at 8 p.m. East Coast Standard Time, you want to go to Night Photo Summit, npsummit.live/HWGTS. If you didn't catch that, guess what? The link is in our bio. So go up to the bio of National Parks at Night and Night Photo Summit, and that way you can easily get there and register. It's free, but you got to register to attend this Friday's special How We Got the Shot. So let's see, how's everyone doing? Who's here from where? Coming in hot from Dallas. Hot? It's in Dallas? I thought it's cold down there this time of year. All right. Justin, thanks for reminding me. You're in Belfast, Maine. I have it from last time, but for sure got that. And a frosty 14 degrees. Whoa, Theo the cat is coming in from Pittsburgh. What's up, Theo? Susan Wilson is coming in from Northern Idaho. And I always like Jody, always listening in from work. Got to appreciate that. And she's in Washington, right? Monica, thanks for joining us. Monica will be our guest on Wednesday. She'll be the last of the night talks that we've got coming up. We've also representing the Bahamas, right on, and Rochester, Minnesota, Las Vegas also is coming in. And AZ Honeybee, what's going on? Good to see you, a nightscaper. And Tamra is coming in from Fullerton, California, Tampa, West Virginia. So many places. Welcome all. It's so great to have you here again under our little campfire. So next question in the comments is, and I know the question, I know the answer for some of you, but who here does any deep space astrophotography? Or maybe put in the comment, I'm just astro curious, but the gear and the post-processing is a little bit daunting. Well, at Night Photo Summit, we're here to help. And tonight's special guest is not only a deep space extraordinaire, but a Pix Insight expert, Sarah Mathews. Sarah Mathews is an astrophotographer, educator, YouTuber who is passionate about helping others discover the wonders of the night sky. Through her YouTube channel and workshops, Sarah shares approachable and practical guidance, helping photographers of all experience levels build confidence in navigating both the technical as well as the creative side of capturing the night sky. So let's get the drum rolls going and give a warm welcome to Sarah Mathews.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
How you doing tonight?
I'm great. How about you?
Good. Well, first we should clarify to everyone, it does say on the screen, but Sarah is a Sarah with an H. So let's just make sure
It is
when we're talking with her, it's Sarah, not Sarah.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, that was I didn't want to get any further, so I'm glad you addressed that.
Exactly. We got to get that tuned in here. So, and where are you tuning in from? Where are you?
Denver, Colorado.
Okay. Mile high.
Mile high. Yes. 5280.
You're closer to the stars than many of us.
It's true, but I'm trying to be humble about it.
How was the weather? We got a clear night tonight?
Yes, we do actually. Yep. Yeah.
Nice.
Surprisingly, it's been pretty cloudy, but last couple nights have been clear, which has been awesome, obviously. What about you? What's it been like? I saw your moon photo. Beautiful.
Thank you. We were howling at the moon here in Brooklyn. And Mars also amazing to just see so bright in the sky. Did you get any shots of Mars and the moon, or you're like, nope. I've got that.
It's just beautiful. I looked at everybody else's.
Yes, it is. We've got Jay from the Bahamas. He is just getting into astro photography. He's got the Sea Star.
Cool.
And that got the hook. And he just purchased a Celestron 11-inch telescope.
Wow.
Okay. What do you think about that? Is that should he have not done that, Sarah? Is that too big of a jump?
No, you can do whatever you want. I mean, starting off with the Sea Star, going to the 11. I think you learned so much about just astrophotography in general. Even if you're starting with like a smart telescope, you just learn a lot about how the motion of the sky works, these different targets, just light collection overall. And so, going to an 11, I love it. You get the whole spectrum there, which is great.
Yeah, I was blown away. Now, I met Sarah just recently. She was also a speaker at our Nightscaper conference, and we were at the star party that ZWO put together, and they had like 6 or 8 of those S50s lined up. You could log on to them with your phone and just watch the image build up. I was blown away. I mean, to me, I don't know how long smart telescopes have been out, or how long good smart telescopes have been out. Let's just rephrase that slightly. But I was blown away with the ease of literally bringing these just really far off, celestial objects to the palm of my hand. So that was just super fascinating that night. And it was fun. It was fun hanging out with you there. And we were all turning our telescopes. You could bopping around. So it was a super fun night. We had a beautiful clear skies as well.
Yes, it was a lot of fun.
So before we get really knee deep into the conversation here, folks, just remember we want to hear from you. So please drop your questions in the chat, and we will definitely do our darndest to answer them. So, Sarah, let's obviously start the best place to start, way back in the beginning. What first got you curious about the night?
Oh man, yeah, I think just the sheer vastness of it all. It is just, overwhelming, but also just very inspiring all at the same time. And I think just trying to deal with the juxtaposition of both of those feelings, even as a kid, is just like, I don't know, it's overwhelming in a good way. But I think also just the vastness is kind of like this great place to have a lot of these different questions. Like, I've always been very existential, like, why are we here? Is there more out there? Is there more beyond that we can actually physically perceive that, it's going on? And so, yeah, for me, the sky is just this physical manifestation of a lot of those questions. And I'm just always blown away every time I go outside still, which is cool. I mean, I think a lot of things kind of lose their luster after you've been around them so many times. But for me, the night sky is I'm just constantly amazed by the sky and the stars and just everything. So that's really where it started, just the sheer vastness and trying to comprehend, like, wow, there's a lot out there that we just don't know.
Nice. And did you, I mean, obviously you got to see, where'd you grow up? You got to see the stars? Like kids growing up in Brooklyn, they'd see the moon, right?
Right.
And maybe we see a planet, maybe. So I guess where'd you grow up? Where'd you see those stars? And maybe what was your first telescope?
Yeah, well, good questions. So I would go up to the mountains every once in a while with my family. We used to have a ranch up there, so we could see the stars, and they were just so beautiful. And also like on road trips. And I mean, the first time I ever went to the Grand Tetons or Yellowstone, I saw the stars, and I was like just as like the most clear I've ever seen them. And I was just like absolutely taken back by just wow. And of course, growing up in like suburbia with, a decent amount of light pollution, but the moon was definitely extremely captivating. I mean, I was really perplexed at how you could just be walking down the sidewalk, but this thing was just like kept going with you. I remember like at a young age trying to understand how that worked. So that's kind of the story of where all this kind of coalesced. But my first telescope was this blue small refractor from the Discovery Channel store. If you guys remember this. Yeah. Right, and I was like, wow, how does this whole thing work? Because I was like 8 or something.
Nice.
So tried to figure it out. And but I also looked through binoculars a lot. That's where I kind of fell in love with the moon, was using binoculars that my dad would use at baseball games. They weren't anything fancy. They were kind of I don't know. I don't even know where he got them, but I just would go outside and sit outside and try to keep my hands as still as possible to look up. And it was really cool.
Nice. Who has there been like an inspiration, a mentor that's like inspired you to get started into, really literally to reach for the stars even more?
I would say, I mean, I never knew him personally, but I would say Carl Sagan. And yeah, for me, Carl Sagan is just the OG. He was able to, I don't know how he did it really, like, but he could make something so large and vast seem so at home at the same time. And I think just being able to kind of bring those two things together was just, I don't know, very powerful for me. I mean, and just the whole concept of pale blue dot, if anyone's familiar with that, the photo of Earth, it's probably, I think like it's not the first photo of Earth from space, but it's, I think, certainly the furthest away we ever saw Earth back in 1990 from Voyager. And he talks about how we see this, speck of a dot, which is Earth, and it's just taking up a couple pixels. And it's just like, imagine that all the people we've ever known, all the people that ever existed have been on this dot, the pain, the suffering, everything. And it just really, as much as I am somebody who loves the night sky and being, enjoying space, I also really have this deep love and appreciation for humanity and Earth. And I think that it really connects us all thinking about space and kind of, for right now, all we have is each other. So we might as well make the best of it and be as kind as possible and try to be understanding. So I think Carl Sagan for sure has always been my biggest source of inspiration.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. He was sort of, I guess, the first astronomer that kind of made it into the mass media of it all, right?
Yeah.
And yes, the cosmos.
Yes.
That was great, and it really just brought that education, that inspiration and enlightenment, to us all. Do you think we're all alone here in the universe?
I go back and forth on this answer a lot, because if you're familiar with like the Drake equation, it's just like it's possible, but it's also totally likely that we're totally alone. I mean, how do we define life? Is it, kind of life 1.0 where there are other single-celled organisms, or are we talking about intelligent life? I don't know. All the things that were going on in New Jersey was pretty interesting. Like why that was going on, I'm not sure. But yeah, I hope that if it does become kind of more public, if it becomes a thing where we know that we're not alone, I hope that humans, I hope it's a good experience transitioning to that knowledge. What about you? That's a good question.
I thought, oh, thank you. Wow, turning the table, Sarah.
Yeah, so hopefully that's okay.
I mean, yes, I grew up with, I grew up believing in dinosaurs, science fiction, comic books, everything. Yes.
Nice.
So I always believe there's something out there, and I'm very surprised that it seems like we've had a very outstretched arm of things out there looking for stuff, but I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that we haven't discovered something. And I also I don't know. I am a forever optimist as well.
Me too.
So,
yep.
Right. So you have to believe that there's other planets, other life like us out there. I mean, they might have 3 noses,
right.
And that's okay. That's totally okay, because my olfactory senses are not the greatest. So I would love to have 2 more that I could lean on.
Wow.
But it just, like you said, it's nice. I mean, it's nice not to feel alone, right? And whether that means you have your family, your friends, your bubble, or we have our planet and we have all the magic that happens around this and that we still don't understand, and we're still trying to figure out. But then, looking at the stars, I mean, they twinkle, right? I mean, they twinkle and all that stuff. That stardust, if it created us, it's got to be creating other magic out there, right?
Yep.
So
connects us.
We have a couple more check-ins and comments in the chat. We've got a strong cup of coffee also checking in from Brooklyn. Woot woot. Right on. Love that. You can also only see the moon and 3 planets right now.
Oh, I don't know why I'm laughing. Sorry.
That's okay. It's all right. We do what we can do, but don't try to do any comet viewing here in New York City. But we got really good car trails. I will say that. And let's see, Old Boone has just got the S50 this past weekend.
Oh, congrats. That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yay. It's been cloudy, but hopefully it'll blow over. Get that app downloaded, get that app downloaded and start getting familiar with how to use that app. I'm sure Sarah's got some YouTube ways to get you started with that S50.
Yep. Yeah, and new Astro gear, you'll always get clouds. It's just like this weird kind of I guess a correlation. But yeah, new Astro gear always brings clouds. It's just like a thing. Yep. So I hope they clear up soon.
Awesome. Yes, exactly. It's got to clear up. It always has to, right?
Always has to. We're up.
All right, and I see OG is in the house and he's got a good question. I'm going to lead in with my question, OG, and then because I think we were on the same wavelength here, I'm going to start with mine, but then we'll go right to yours because it's a good 2-parter. So Sarah, we've got some deep space curious people in here. Can you share with us some practical tips on how people can get started with capturing deep space?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my biggest suggestion is just to start with what you have. Start small, I guess we could call it. Just start simple. I think there's this kind of notion that it has to be very complex, it has to be very expensive, but it doesn't have to. You can just start with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, which a lot of us have, and a tripod just to kind of keep things sturdy, and a telephoto lens. But even if you have something like a 50 millimeter, you'll be just fine. And the nice thing about using like a 50 millimeter or 150 millimeter telephoto lens, for example, on a tripod that's just stationary, is that, it's very forgiving of, any sort of star trailing, especially if you are taking really fast exposures. And if you're imaging a very bright target like the Andromeda Galaxy or the Orion Nebula. And the nice thing about those 2 targets, for example, for beginners or just really for anybody, is that they are they're pretty easy to find in the sky without having to have some sort of, go-to mount like the one I have behind me. And they're very just easy to frame. And because they are so bright, you can collect a lot of light on them pretty quickly. So you can reveal those faint details in a final stacked image. So yeah, basically you can start with what you have, and that's just one route. But if you want to kind of dive into things a little bit more deeper after you kind of get acquainted, you can always get a handy star tracker like this for your tripod, which is great, which will help to compensate for the Earth's rotation, so you can take longer exposures. But like some of the folks there that have like the Sea Star, this is the S30. But yeah, what's really cool about the smart telescopes is that that's another great way to get started. And maybe eventually you'll get your own like dedicated astro rig or not. But yeah, start simple. Start with what you have.
Awesome. I love that. That's great. So OG leading it and you, it's perfect. Great. Part two is OG's asking what a good starter budget telescope to buy that you can attach to a DSLR or mirrorless camera. So if we're thinking we're starting with either a smart telescope, which by the way, folks, these smart telescopes are like, what is it, $350 to $500?
Yeah,
right?
they're great.
It's pretty. I mean,
hard to argue against them.
I'm sold. I'm sold. I'm sold on it, right? I'm totally, yes, I love that you're saying use what you have to, right? I think the next important thing really to add to your rig is as you mentioned, a tracker, right? Because that's really kind of where, if you want to get serious, you can still use what you have, but then add that tracker, and then trackers are by how much weight you're putting on and stuff like that. But then from there, I think the next step would be then, okay, we got to get closer. Right. So what would be that good starter budget telescope, you think?
I think something like the Red Cat 51, which I don't, it's in the other room, but yeah, it's 250 millimeters at f4.9. If I'm wrong, I apologize if I offended anybody with that. But yeah, that's a great telescope. It's also very forgiving of just how much spacing you kind of need in the back, because that's another point. But yeah, if you want a lot more reach or relatively more reach, I would go with something like this here. This is the ASCAR 71F. It's $499. It gives you 490 millimeters of focal length. So if you are using a full frame, that does give you some, that gives you a lot of options. Same with a APS-C crop sensor, that would be great too. But for that much money, $599, it's great. And it's kind of like this no fuss telescope, and it can go on like the Skywatcher Star Adventure GTI, which is the go-to version of the fan favorites Skywatcher Star Adventure that I just showed you. So yeah, that would probably be my biggest or my next recommendation up is this guy right here. I mean, you can't beat it, and it performs really well.
Nice.
You can easily.
Nice.
I was last night. I was using a mirrorless camera with it, and it just looks great.
And what you say, and you need to get a, what is it? I think it's called a T adapter to make them.
Yes.
Like a T adapter to whatever your mount is.
Correct. Yes.
Right. So that's right. Remember, folks, the telescopes don't fit right onto your camera, just like your camera needs its own lenses. You need to get this T adapter, but those T adapters are like $20 or something like that.
Yeah.
Not that expensive, So that's a great way. I am a little curious about those Red Cats, and I'm wondering, Sarah, if you could explain. There's like, I think there's like 2 or 3 different versions. There's that sort of wider angle. It's called the 51, the 51, the Red Cat 51. Then there's a 71, and then there's a 91. Listen, I'm a photographer. Just tell me what focal length that is. I want to. Is that 150? Is that 200?
Yeah, right.
What do I have to understand this new mumbo jumbo? I don't know if you can help translate for the normal photographers curious what these 51, 71, 91 means.
Yes, great point. So there are some telescopes out there that they'll start off with the actual focal length in its name, but most telescopes are going to have the size of its aperture. So for example, the ASCAR 71F, the aperture itself, the glass is 71 millimeters. Same with the other telescopes we were mentioning, the Red Cat 51, that's a 51 millimeter telescope. So it's the aperture. Same with the 71 and the 91. And so that's definitely a thing that stands out compared to camera lenses is the whole nomenclature of the telescope itself. Good point.
Yeah. So, and we have a question. Justin is asking. I love this question, Justin, because we're both photographers, and yes, how do we translate this? So he's asking, he's got a 300 millimeter 2.8 lens.
Okay.
You know, that's a pretty nice lens. Very fast, got a great focal length. You know, you're going to get right in there. How would that, obviously performing on a regular camera, mirrorless DSLR, compare to that Red Cat that's a 250 millimeter 4.9? Is the Red Cat better because it's like just meant for astrophotography? If you could kind of just enlighten us about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think the main difference with a telescope like the Red Cat 51 compared to like an equivalent camera lens is that the optics themselves are very much corrected for something called chromatic aberration, which I'm sure many of other photographers know, which you're going to get with areas of high contrast like stars, areas like nebulae against this background of space. And yeah, so mainly, the correction of chromatic aberration, but also the star field itself. The lenses, especially if they have built-in correctors like the Red Cat 51 and the 71 and the 91 have multiple glass elements. So it's going to flatten out the field of view. Normally with refractors, there's some field curvature at the end or at the edges where the stars kind of look like comets. So with multiple lenses in something like the Red Cat 51, you don't have to buy an extra corrector, that you're just going to get round stars all the way through the edge or to the ends, which is really nice on a crop sensor or even especially on a mirrorless camera or a full frame, excuse me. Also, a lot of these telescopes come with kind of these accessories like these rings or the dovetail saddle that you would need to use on like an equatorial mount, and also like a guide scope kind of little bar here for auto guiding, which basically sends tiny corrections to your mount to keep your setup perfectly centered on a star. And just some other types of nice little accessories, also like built-in filter trays. So like if you want to add a light pollution filter that threads right into the back of the telescope, something like the Red Cat 51 already has that. So otherwise with a mirrorless camera and a DSLR, you'd have to use a clip-in filter if you're going to be using like a lens of that kind. So those are kind of the top reasons I would pick a telescope sometimes over a lens.
Awesome. And OG, I think this also probably answers your question. He's asking about a point and shoot camera that's got like a super telephoto lens.
Oh yeah.
Right? So
like the Nikon.
same thing. Yeah. Like those Nikon, like P900s and stuff like that. Have you ever used any of those? Like those small sensor super compacts to get close to the stars?
I haven't, no, but they're pretty cool. I mean, I've had lots of questions about them and I've looked into them. So everything that I'm speaking about now is just all anecdotal. But I think they're really cool. I love that they're just easy to use seemingly, and it's not as complex. But the issue with those, unfortunately, I don't know if you can detach the lenses from them because they are point and shoot. Yeah. So if you wanted to attach it this way, where it's called prime focus, where the focal plane, there's only one focal plane right onto your camera sensor. Otherwise, using a point and shoot camera would be kind of tricky.
Get that tracker, right? Because some of those point and shoots are 1,000, 2,000 millimeters.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you would. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of focal
it's also
length.
a small sensor. So kind of what you're talking about the chromatic as well as chromatic aberrations that would be happening would probably be a little bonkers. We have, let's see, a nice question or a nice comment. Photo X is saying they went older school and they have a Skywatcher Esprit 80 with an iOption CEM 40 EC and ZWO 533.
Okay.
So old school, but still a solid setup.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all that equipment will just keep going. So no, that's great.
Nice. Okay. So, all right. So we've talked about all the different ways we can kind of capture from kind of the beginning and what we have, and also let's talk briefly. We also, folks, Apple has proven that we can reach for the stars with our phones and our
True.
and everything else.
Yes.
However, you can't get rid of that flare, but we do. I think we got
The flare, I know.
the flare is insane,
Gosh,
right? I know.
I know.
But yes, I don't know quite how they do that with it, but I think the ultimate, and I'm curious if you've dabbled to this level, is renting a telescope.
Mm.
Is that something you've done? Is that something you could talk about to our audience?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I haven't done it myself. I've looked into it quite to a large extent, or for a while, because I was going to move and I didn't know what I didn't really know how available the sky was going to be, or just because a lot of the area was going to be covered in trees. But that being said, yeah, renting a telescope is really cool at these remote sites, especially if you're in like the northern hemisphere and there's one in the southern hemisphere. I mean, the southern hemisphere has some sweet nebulae and galaxies, and I mean, it just, yeah, I think renting a telescope is really cool. Also, not everybody has a backyard or a balcony, or also for us folks that are in the metropolitan area, very densely populated with lots of light pollution. That's another reason you could rent time at a telescope. And I also think it's a great way to kind of break or lower the barriers to entry with a normal setup, because a normal setup that costs a lot of money, it can also be kind of overwhelming. But you kind of learn to operate a telescope remotely, which, just like operating a sea star, all that stuff translates in the real world once you do get like your own gear, if you ever decide to. But myself, yeah, like I actually haven't ever done it myself. But you can also download data, which helps you to learn to process the data. So that's what I also think is a great plus. There's so many different ways to do data acquisition. There's so many ways to just partake in astrophotography, not just the traditional way. So I'm a really big advocate for like whatever works for you, whatever means you can find to kind of partake is the best way to do it, I think.
It's cool. I mean, think about it. You can have the Milky Way all year long by logging into the southern, the Atacama array. That's a pretty sweet array.
It's okay. No, I'm just it's great. It's all right. No, it's sweet. I would love just to go down there, and I would just have a field day.
Yeah, so. Exactly. You don't want to be down there in their winter when it's really peaking.
Hot.
Or sorry, their summer, right? I guess is cold, or our summer for them. It's flipped, but. Right. So we have a question from Old Boone. What are the most important steps or steps when processing photos? Besides PixInsight, are there any other essential softwares that you cannot live without?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, PixInsight's definitely my number one, but other ones that I can't live without? I do love Serial. I think Serial's great. It's kind of similar to PixInsight, although I don't think it has doesn't have everything that PixInsight does. Also Photoshop. Photoshop is great. And yeah, honestly, I've just been using PixInsight a lot, but some of the plugins or some of the other software, third-party software that you can use in PixInsight, but also in some of the other ones that I mentioned, like Photoshop, you can use tools that really reduce the noise in a beautiful way, not in a kind of like a greasy way that sometimes noise reduction tools occur. But yeah, I would probably say Photoshop. And if you don't want to pay for Photoshop, which I totally understand, I think that something like GIMP is great as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Jason Math, great comment going on where we were talking about where we can rent or get a closer look. Jason Maths is commenting, if you're a member of your local astronomical society, you can often borrow one from the inventory they have set aside for members to use.
Thank you, cool. Jason, for that hot tip.
I know, exactly. And so find those local astro societies in your neighborhood or close to you, because that is a great way to just find your community, bounce off absolutely. Of them and then rent. Yes, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
AZ Honeybee.
Oh, what's up? Also, what's up to Jason too? Sorry,
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
I
yes,
say hi
both.
to him all the time.
Yeah,
But hi both.
exactly.
I was just talking to her.
Nice. Well, she has a question. Good question. I like this
Okay.
one. Um, what's your go-to exposure time and number of images for an average brightness nebula from a dark sky?
Ooh, okay.
So and there that's part one.
Okay.
And for a dark nebula.
Oh, okay. So just for like a
Okay.
regular bright nebula and then for a dark nebula. What
Exactly.
camera? What camera? Is it a DSLR mirrorless or
And,
is it a dedicated astro camera?
I,
Uh,
I think I think she just I know she's got a camera, but I think she just got something from ZWO, or I remember her testing it out at the Star Party. She was getting all fixed up at the Star Party. I remember that.
yes.
Um, okay,
Um,
there's the comment. 294 MC Pro.
okay. Yeah. So
And what is that? I guess could you enlighten for those who
sure.
do? Yes.
Yes, it is a dedicated astronomy camera. So it's a camera that looks like this. It's like
It's a
red.
box. Or
It
no,
doesn't
it's a
have to be
circle.
red.
It's a
Yes, this
circle.
is a filter wheel,
Okay.
but it is a circle, and
Tube.
there's no screen, so you kind of just have to imagine. No, I'm just kidding. You have to use a screen of some kind. But yeah, so just like a DSLR or mirrorless camera sensor has kind of like the optimal ISO, depending on a lot of different factors. But every sensor kind of has its like best ISO that you should use and kind of best exposure length depending on the gain or depending on the noise levels, etc. But for like the 294, I think that the base gain, which is just the same as ISO in DSLR and mirrorless talk, I think it's going to be 100. But each dedicated astronomy camera, to my point, has its kind of best gain settings. So for a bright nebula, I would say gain probably 100. Same with a dark nebula, but the exposure time, like an exposure length, I'd probably go for probably like 2 or 3 minutes on the bright nebula in a dark sky, especially if there's a lot of dynamic range. You don't want to clip the really bright parts. So I think 2 to 3 minutes is probably okay. But then for a dark nebula, you could probably go to 5 minutes so that you're still getting enough signal in each subframe. So yeah, that's how I would. That's what I would go with.
Awesome. And how big is the sensor in that that tubular camera that
Oh,
you just showed us?
this one here,
Yes.
tubular. Yeah. It's the APS-C size. So
Perfect. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just like
Great.
yep.
Nice. Is there one, because I think photographers, they're always like full frame, full frame, full frame. Is there a full frame sort of astro dedicated tube out there by any companies?
Tube.
I can't call it a camera. I just can't.
I know. Yeah, it was very weird to me. I was just like, what is this apparatus? I was just like, for a while. It took some time to take. But yeah, there's a camera called the ASI 6200, and it's the same sensor in a lot of other brands out there.
Okay.
The same, but yeah, this camera is a full frame, and that camera will really put pretty much any sort of optics to the test. Like a super wide angle camera lens, for example. I have a friend that has like a dual setup with two 6200s and two super wide angle lenses, and getting very sharp stars all the way to the edge of the full frame is very difficult, obviously, for a lot of people, especially working with the pixel scale with these cameras. It's like 3.76 microns. So, yeah.
But APS-C is probably, I would think, obviously a nice budget, and as well as you get that additional magnification that the full frame does not give you. So that's always kind of a good starting point. Awesome. Excellent. All right. Y'all have been getting some good questions in here, but I think it's time that we should look at some pictures. So I just want to give a little shout out here. Sarah will be speaking at our upcoming Night Photo Summit, January 24th to 26th. Her class at Editing Astro Images, 10 Tips to Getting Started with Pix Insight. Love this. Love that we're offering this class. PixInsight, for those of you who are not known, I know we've been chatting about it a little bit, is a renowned for its advanced capabilities in processing astronomical images. But its complexity can definitely feel daunting at first. Through live demonstrations and real-world examples, Sarah Mathews will teach you how to navigate PixInsight's interface, streamline your workflow, and process your data with confidence. Whether you're tracking your first galaxy or refining your skills, you'll leave with the knowledge and tools to elevate your deep space images. So let's give the audience a little bit of a tease of what they can expect and look at some of your images. And please share with us the story behind the shots and what it took to process them. All right. So let's give us hold on. I want to put us right down. There we go. I love the bubbles. So where are we here, Sarah?
Well, we are at the Omega Nebula, Messier 17 or M17. You can see it in the sky during the summer months. It's in the constellation Sagittarius, and it's very bright. This is a pretty deep field view of it. It's cropped from a 770 millimeter telescope. But what's cool about this image, I think, is that I imaged it with a monochrome camera. As we, all cameras are monochrome, except this one does not have a Bayer matrix in front of it. So I have to put a filter wheel, and I image through 3 different filters that respond or allow different wavelengths of light that different types of gas and space emit. The most popular being hydrogen alpha. So what you're kind of seeing with this, the green areas, but also with kind of like mostly just kind of the red and greenish areas are hydrogen alpha, but also the other filter or the other gas called sulfur 2, which kind of shows up similar colors. But then there's also the very blue parts, which is oxygen 3. And what's really cool about this inner area, I was kind of talking about high dynamic range targets or HDR targets like the Orion Nebula. And you don't want to overexpose your images because you don't want to lose the detail in these very bright areas where a lot of big, bright blue stars are being born. So to combine all these different kind of filters together, or the images together, I had to use PixInsight, which you can do in Photoshop. But the nice thing about using PixInsight is that you can actually isolate the different emission lines from these filters so that you don't sometimes there's more signal in one image versus the other monochrome image. So in PixInsight, you can really balance those signals out so that you can actually reveal all the structures from all these different emission lines that you're collecting data from. And this is it's a Hubble palette. So the red channel is marked to the red channel, or wait, what did I say? The red channel is linked to sulfur 2. The green channel is linked to hydrogen alpha, and the blue channel is linked to oxygen 3. So you're really kind of seeing a lot more of the hydrogen alpha detail this way.
Awesome. That beautiful picture. Love it. Very well. So much like soft detail, right? The gentle. This is a very gently processed, I think, oodles and oodles of information. Let's take a look at the next one. Where are you taking us to here?
All right, we are in Cepheus, and Cepheus is a really cool area of the night sky because there are a lot of dark nebulae all around. Like you can pretty much point your camera anywhere and there would be dark nebulae, but there's also just a ton of emission nebulae. So nebulae that are emitting like hydrogen alpha. These are star forming regions, but this area in particular, it is an emission nebula, but it's also a reflection nebula. Specifically these blue regions, which is hydrogen or oxygen 3, but also because it is a reflection nebula, it's reflecting light from the very large bright stars around. And in PixInsight, what I did is I actually took data from the different channels, if you will, and I mixed kind of the gases together. So this isn't just a straight up, hydrogen alpha to the red channel, oxygen 3 to the blue channel. It's a mixture. And but what I wanted to point out about this image specifically is that Before I used something called deconvolution, a deconvolution tool. So anytime you're imaging through the atmosphere, the light coming through from a point source of light, like a star, is, you know, spreading out. And so you lose detail because of that, the atmosphere basically, and through your optics. But using deconvolution tools, you're able to regain that clarity, and it does come across as you're sharpening, but you can basically reconstruct the data that it actually should look like based off of these different kind of deconvolution models. But another cool thing about deconvolution is that if you have issues with stars on the edges, so like if you're using like a camera lens, for example, or a refractor that's not corrected properly, some of these deconvolution tools can actually make those stars actually round at the edges, so that you have those perfectly round stars all the way through the entire field of view. So that's why I'm incorporating this image, is the correction of the star field that was not optically hardware corrected.
And let's also, again, for those who are not as deep spacey, how many? This is not a single image.
Oh, correct. Yes. Yeah, I wanted to show you guys kind of like all these different integration or all these different sub exposures, because with, you know, like just like with Milky Way images, you want to take a lot of images most of the time because you get more signal. Same with deep space objects, they're very faint. You're also imaging at night, right? So these low light conditions are pretty tough. So to reveal those details, you have to take lots of images, collect a lot of light. And so this image here is 35 hours of total integration time. So over, I can't even recall how many days or how many nights. But that's also another really cool thing about PixInsight, is that, you know, your skies will change throughout each night. And so in PixInsight, you can actually calibrate, but basically, you can correct the sub exposures with calibration frames in PixInsight, which you can't really do in Photoshop because all you can really do is stack them. But these tools in PixInsight allow you to take all of your sub exposures, your calibration frames, which will basically remove any sort of vignetting or dust motes, and then it'll pop out with something like kind of something close to this, which is really cool. So PixInsight's very powerful for a lot of data.
35 hours.
Yes, 35 hours. Yeah.
So you say you get a couple hours a night, let's say, and a big cloud kind of comes through right where you're shooting. Is that night shot, or is it just the cloud when the cloud kind of passed through? You can't obviously use those images, but you can use the stuff before and the after.
Yes. Yep. Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Because you're tracking and everything like that. Okay. Shoo. Oof, but 35 hours. Wow.
Yeah,
I've never done anything for 35 hours.
Yeah, it's a big endeavor, and I think if you're already kind of experienced in doing deep space and you've kind of been maybe doing it for a few months or maybe a year, I think like the biggest piece of advice I'd give you is just to, you know, instead of jumping from target to target, start to collect more light from one target, and you'll really see the benefits pay off in processing. So for anybody out there that's been doing imaging for a while, that's
the pro tip. All right. Whoa, we take a step back now.
Yeah, we take a step back. So
you zoomed us, you got us right in there, and now we're gonna.
I did. I wanted you really close. So this is a planetary nebula. They're not planets, but they just looked like planets through the eyepiece when we first discovered them. But a planetary nebula is just when a star, basically the size of our star, explodes. Basically, it collapses in on itself, and the outer shells just expel, and that's kind of like what you're seeing on the inner edges or inner circles. But this is called the Dumbbell Nebula. It's Messier 27. This is about 18 to 19 hours of total integration. And the challenge with a target like this is that they are so small. So you really need some good sky conditions. The atmosphere, we were talking about the stars twinkling. Stars are twinkling because of the atmosphere. So you don't want to, you know, it's hard to image when the sky is all wavy. But in PixInsight, the cool thing about this image is that you can actually process linear data, so unstretched data, where when raw frames are coming in, you're not able to see all that data, basically, especially with an image like this, where it's very dark. But working with unstretched or linear data, it allows you to bring out that signal, the light, in ways that you actually want. Hopefully I'm making sense there. But the stars, especially, you don't want to bring out the stars too much because then it kind of overpowers the nebula. So in PixInsight, you can separate the stars separate them and process them differently and then bring them back together. You can also really try to work on the star colors themselves because there's a lot of cool detail in the colors of the stars themselves.
Wow. A couple chat things are going on in the chat I'm seeing here that pertain to kind of what we're definitely looking and talking about. Going back to these 35 hours of integration, Photo X is asking, how do you align your shot over each day?
Ooh,
And then in combined with that, Old Boone is asking, when you do these multiple nights of data collection, can you do that with a mount like the Star Adventurer?
Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I do use a mount and to align everything, but I also use certain software where that connects to the mount that will move the mount to where I ask it to go very nicely, and it will do something.
Pretty please.
Pretty please, pretty please, and it comes through most of the time, which is great. Yep. And it'll do something called plate solving. So it's going to kind of work how a satellite works, how it orients itself in space, where it takes pictures of all these different stars, and from that it tells the mount where it's looking, basically. And so that's how I align my telescope in that way. But then because it's an equatorial mount, so it compensates for the Earth's rotation so that it actually can keep the image in the field of view perfectly. If you're using a smart telescope, something that will happen is called field rotation, because it's on an alt-azimuth mount, which does not compensate for the Earth's rotation. So I have to do something called polar aligning in equatorial mounts. And that's where I just move the azimuth and altitude knobs to align to the polar celestial pole of my hemisphere, which is basically where the star Polaris is. And then once I do that, it'll keep the object perfectly centered, which is really cool. So yeah, I think on your mount, you should be able to do that.
Yes, the Star Adventure. Yes, you certainly can. Yeah,
yes.
Definitely. Perfect. All right. And this is, I think this is our last shot. So yeah, this is a nice close one. But I don't recognize this. What's going on here?
Yes, this is the North American Nebula, and it is in the constellation Cygnus, which is visible right now in the Northern Hemisphere. It should be right overhead for most of the latitudes that I think a lot of North America is at. But what you're seeing here is the stars removed. And I kind of touched on this about PixInsight. You can remove the stars, and you can do that in Photoshop. But with this, I was able to remove the stars at an earlier stage, which kind of gives you more control over bringing out the nebulosity and the really faint areas. Like the purple dust around is actually not as easy to bring out. So had I kept the stars in, it would have been really, really tricky. But yeah, this was taken with this telescope behind me, the ASCAR 71F. It's about 4 hours of total integration time. And it's a one-shot color camera, so it does have a Bayer matrix.
Boom. And let's actually take a look, because that was actually a couple of the questions or OG was asking. Let's take a look. Let's go back over here. Were all of those images taken with that rig, or just that last one? Do you remember offhand?
Just the last one was, but yes.
Awesome. Let's see. We have a couple other, let's see. OG was asking about just a general question. OG, you're asking, can anyone attend the Night Photo Summit gathering? And does it cost anything? Anyone can attend. Yes, there is a cost to it. It is $3.99. But with that, you get 3 days of viewing and there's like 42 speakers, 50 hours of education. You can't watch it all in those 3 days, but you can, you get all that and all those classes for a year. So, and then I think we've got tons of giveaways there. There's over, I think, $80,000 worth of giveaways that we're doing there. So not only is there tons of education there, you're going to be hanging out with like-minded people, kind of like what we're doing right here, but times 300, so a lot of people there. There's networking rooms that you can kind of meet up with people. You'll be able to meet speakers like Sarah and others. So super fun. Go to our link in the bio and go to Night Photo Summit. It's 2025.nightphotosummit.com to learn more It's been great seeing you here, OG. And we've got tons of other free education continuing leading up to it. So definitely enjoy that. Let's see. We got a bunch of comments. People are commenting, agreeing, and discussing. We got some good Astro people here in the house. This is a fun one. I slightly know the answer to this, but I'm going to definitely pitch it to you, Sarah. Old Boone is saying a friend of mine wants to try imaging with a film camera.
Oh, okay.
On my Star Adventurer, since it'll be one exposure. Any recommendations on objects or settings?
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is definitely out of my wheelhouse. But
yeah, that's a tough one because it really depends on the film you're using.
Yes, exactly.
So
yeah,
and the time, right? So Sarah, you might be able to speak to if we have if we can take one exposure, then I would think we want to take it for the longest amount of time that we can track it, right?
Yes.
You want to add a tracker to this scenario. We can't not just film camera on a telephoto lens. You need to do a tracker. I've been doing night photography since the film days, and there's a reason why there was no shots of the Milky Way in the film days, because it wasn't sensitive enough, right, to capture the star points. We just got star trails 90% of the time, unless you got a tracker. And back then, trackers were really just for astronomers. No photographer played with them, So you really got to know, what, the sort of your reciprocity failure of that film. And how long you can go with that film before you need to double, triple, quadruple the time to make sure that sensitivity of the light is still carving the image onto it. So there's that factor. But then you also want to kind of play to the longest exposure you can do with the tracker to kind of gather as much information as you get. But, you're not, I think, how long can you go for a single exposure on a tracker, Sarah? That would be my question. I know it again depends on the focal length, but let's just say you're working with a 100 millimeter.
Yeah. If it's depending on where it is in the night, like where you're pointing.
Exactly. It depends where it is.
Yeah, because the closer it is to the celestial pole, the slower the stars appear to move. Because, but yeah, I would say with 100 millimeters, with really great polar alignment and no wind, I would say a minute.
Okay.
2 minutes if you're really good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's good.
I'm optimistic.
So then what I would say, because I know film and reciprocity failures. So look at we're a team on this. I love it. There's a lot of good film you can use. Not everything, not like Tri-X by Kodak, the black and white stuff. No, that stuff has reciprocity at 1 second. But there is actually slide film, especially the slide film from Fuji. You can look at either their like Provia slide film. I think is the only slide film they've got left. You can look at Acros is their black and white film by Fujifilm as well. Both those don't hit reciprocity until 3 or 4 minutes. So the combination of those two, I am spacing. There is this wonderful film shooter who does do this a lot. And I tell you what, if you hit me up on the DM, I will find that person for you and make sure that you're watching his feed on Instagram, YouTube, etc. He's doing some wonderful things that that with film and deep space, and it's pretty cool. So, all right, let's see any other questions. You guys have been great. Okay, let's see which else could you remember for. Okay. This is a funny one. Dr. Nahar is asking, which telescope do you recommend for buying equipment that you can still use later and won't regret as you advance on in deep space?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's a balance, right? Like you could go on the full end of the other part of the spectrum, which is like getting a really big, massive telescope and just be like, wow, like what do I do with this? Yeah. Or you start off with like a camera lens, but then be like, well, I still want more. So I think probably your best bet is for sure anything that you'll actually use. You know, just make sure you get something that you use. And something like a refractor, if you're comfortable with a camera lens, you're going to be very comfortable with a refractor. And that's why I'm always like such a proponent of a refractor, especially something like the Red Cat 51, where at least the first generation had a very similar type of focuser, but they just all around function very similarly to a camera lens. So a refractor for one, and something probably in the 300 millimeter to 500 millimeter range. I think you'll be there. So many deep space objects frame up really nice with an APS-C or full frame camera within that range. You'll have lots of different targets, lots of different types of composition, and they're very forgiving as well because they are so wide angle compared to something with 1,000 millimeters.
And just to give people perspective, that my partner Matt at National Parks at Night has got I think he's got both cats, but I've been trying to pry the Cat 51 out of his hands, at least for a long-term loan. And just again, the photographers out there, that lens is probably equivalent to a 70-200, lens. That sort of, it doesn't have that zooming flexibility, but just thinking of what's in your bag, right? Because that's also, to me, a little bit of that daunting thing is that, okay, I usually go on a night shoot with 2 cameras, 2 to 3 lenses, maybe a tracker, 2 tripods, and if we're hiking, that rig behind you, Sarah, has that been on your back much?
It has not, but one of the nice things about this kind of telescope and this kind of mount is that they're very lightweight compared to this other mount. You can't see it, but it's off camera. But this other mount, like a traditional mount, they're very heavy. But something like this, you could put in a backpack for sure. And like the tripod is made out of carbon fiber, but is it as light as the star tracker and everything else? No, it's not. But But
I think you're fitting that and a camera. You're not fitting many. It's like, that's your dedication that night.
It is. Yeah. You're going to have to wear pants with pockets for food.
And then pants with pockets. Don't forget that.
No, you can't. No, you cannot. So yeah. But you plan ahead. And that's, I think, kind of a little bit of a difference with like deep space astrophotography. It's a little bit like, I'm not saying you guys, I'm not saying that going out and doing nightscape photography is where you don't plan. You do definitely have to plan. You have to plan so many of your shots, but it's a little bit different where you're like, okay, I'm very constrained. What you just have to factor that into your planning session a little bit differently.
Okay. So Sarah, for our lucky listeners here tonight, because they've been great. They've been so asking tons of questions. You guys have been amazing. Let's give them something. Can you share maybe one PixInsight tip that you won't be giving in your class?
Sure. Yeah. I think so. In PixInsight, if you've ever wanted to, if you've ever imaged like comets that are visible, for example, comets are kind of tricky because even if you're using a star tracker, the star tracker is typically tracking at a sidereal rate, or where how the stars, or the rate in which the stars appear to move in the night sky. So trying to align all those frames together while the comet moves at a different rate than the stars, you'll often end up with, the comet looking good, but the stars behind it not looking very good, because again, that mismatch of the rate of the stars versus the comet. So in PixInsight, I won't show you like the straight up data, but you would use something like comet alignment, which is a process. And there are so many different processes. I won't overwhelm you with them all. But comet alignment is cool because you just add in your frames, and they can be from a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. I don't have them right in this area, but you would load them all into here and then tell them where to output. And you could also add something else like object like star exterminator, which will remove the image, the stars in the image first, and then you load all those images into here. Sorry, I went backwards. And then you'll come out with a comet photo where the stars aren't all mingled with the stacked image of a comet. I hope that all made sense. I can't really run it on this computer while streaming simultaneously.
No, we don't want to live demo, but we just want to get that tip. Folks, I think if you want more of that tip, I'm sure you just reach out to Sarah.
I'm not sharing my screen. Haha. Okay. It's okay. Hopefully I described it. But yeah, it's cool. There's a lot of cool things. It's not just deep space that you can do with PixInsight.
Right, exactly. We actually, Justin's asking, do you have a promo code, affiliate code for PixInsight?
I do not. No.
Right. You just.
I'm just genuinely like, I've been using it for so many years. I'm not a spokesperson in any capacity. It's just kind of my pick of poison.
Exactly. Right. Dr. Nihar is asking if we've announced our in-person event. So for those of you who don't know, we also do the Nightscaper Conference. That is set for May of 2026. We are still looking into it. We've got some clarity, but probably expect announcement closer to that year out one. But it's still be in the United States. I'll tell you that. And probably west of the Mississippi. How about that? Where there's still there's a couple of negotiations going on with a couple places. So stay tuned for more. We've got a couple more questions. We are in overtime mode now, folks. So I got 2 questions that are in the queue right now. If you have any more, now's your time to get it, but I probably only will get to 1 or 2 more. Sarah, what is the best way if they want to continue the conversation or ask questions? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah. Feel free to message me on my Instagram. My handle is Sarah Math _Astro, or feel free to go to my YouTube channel. It's also Sarah Math Astro. You can also email me at info@sarahmath.com.
Okay.
But feel free to reach out.
You got rid of the U's. No Mathews. Just went
it's true.
straight to the math.
Just straight to the math. I'm all for I love anything British or British humor, so maths just kind of works.
Awesome. Jess is asking, how do you deal with when the moon's up? I mean, is that for a deep space astro person when the moon's up, or you're just like, nope, this is my time to work on PixInsight processing, or are you out there capturing maybe what's the best object to do besides the moon? I guess you always capture the moon.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question, because obviously the moon is its own source of light pollution. It's beautiful though, but I would recommend using something like, if you're going to be imaging like an emission nebula, like the Orion Nebula or the Horsehead Nebula, for example, you can use like something called a dual narrowband filter, which narrowband just means like it's only letting in very specific wavelengths of light from the gas that's being emitted from these targets from like a celestial object. So for a nebula, like an emission nebula that's emitting light, or even like a planetary nebula, which also emits light, you can use this, like this filter here lets in wavelengths from hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. And so is it ideal when the moon is out? No. But if you still just want to kind of keep going, you can use something like that. And I would pick a target that's kind of like further away from the moon.
Yep.
It's totally possible.
Yep. Nice. Old Boone loved Sarah's recommendation for rechargeable hand warmers in her Can't Live Without Accessories video.
Yes. Oh, good. I'm glad it was helpful.
And Dr. Nihar, thank you so much. This all has made this hobby so enjoyable. I really appreciate it and feel good knowing I'm not alone in my passion for the night sky. That's right back to the beginning that we were kind of talking about, that we're not alone, right? We're not alone in the universe. We're not alone in this cute little hobby or business or whatever. We're not alone reaching for and enjoying the stars. So with that being said, Sarah, we're going to wrap up the conversation, but I would like you to share with us any projects that you're working on, or the best way for people to kind of continue that conversation with you beyond like the Instagram. Where else can they learn from you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm also a writer for Sky and Telescope magazine. I do write their first exposure. What is it? Yeah, I write for their first exposure section, and first exposure comes out every other month in Sky and Telescope. So if you'd like to learn more, you can find me over there. You can also, again, find me on YouTube. Also, I do one-on-ones. I also do workshops. But yeah, feel free to go to my website or, again, my YouTube, or email me at info@sarahmaths.com. And yeah, those are probably the best ways. Or send a homing pigeon,
I love that. Just I've sent you a postcard, so I guess the homing
that's
pigeon.
true. Yes.
Look at that.
That's
Appropriate
great.
postcard.
Yep. It's true.
Folks. Yep. Nice. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. Really, this has been a wonderful, totally engaging, enlightening, inspiring. I think people in the comments are saying, great, they just dropped their $300 on Pix Insight. We've got a lot of chatter now about more, telescopes and other accessories to get everyone stocking up on their hand warmers that I'm seeing.
Nice.
But thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. So been so great also just to get to know you a little bit better. So really appreciate you taking the time out to share your visions of the stars with us. Thank you all here in our audience. Really, thank you for tuning in. You've made this a really engaging conversation. Remember, if you just came in late, this rewatch will be available on our Instagram page in about 10, 15 minutes. And again, if you are passionate about night photography, consider joining us and other like-minded people at our annual Night Photo virtual conference. It's happening. Oh boy, it's happening in 13 days, January 24th to the 26th. We'll have over 40 presenters, 50 hours of inspiration, instruction, and fun camaraderie, community, and a stellar, I might add, glow-in-the-dark conference t-shirt mailed right to your home. We send a swag bag to you. If you can't make it for the weekend or miss one or two of those days, you get online access to all of those classes for 1 year after the live event. So level up your skills and with over 3 full days of night photography, education, and inspiration at 2025.nightphotosummit.com. So again, thank you all so much. Really appreciate you spending the time out. And again, if you missed it, just get ready you can rewatch it very soon from there. We've got a bunch of other ones as well that we've been doing. Next up, like I mentioned, Friday, we've got How We Got the Shots. And then this weekend, I'm doing some afternoon night talks. We're going to have Dan Zafra and Alex Wides. Dan's from Spain. Alex is from Italy. So we're going to get very international this weekend, as well as at the conference. And so Dr. Nahir, the night conference again, it's recorded. It's live. Sorry, I should say it is live when it happens, but then you can watch the recording. So yes, good question. All of the classes are live and you get to interact with the speakers with that, because there's always dedicated Q&A time and additional time that you can network, mingle, and we've got star parties as well. We've got really cool virtual star parties. So check it out. Again, thank you all so very much. Amazing Sky Guy, thank you. Saying hi to both of us. And we will catch you somewhere out under the night sky.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.